maybe I will take the floor now. I don't know whether Florence has any announcement to make in relation to Mentimeter, which is the technology that we will use this afternoon for 3 questions. But at least I can already mention the first question, because, well, you may see it on your end, but maybe not in the room. That has to do with how to boost stakeholders' participation. Yeah. So you have heard a number of programs referring to this. The question is what kind of added value for stakeholders, but also how to engage stakeholders in the research project, especially when you have a systemic approach.
So you were invited to log in to menti.com. And then, yes, we see that people have started to answer. So you just use the code that is displayed on the screen. And then you can introduce 3 different votes. And then we will see the word cloud. So it's kind of magic.
Great. Thank you, Florence. So we do not see really things moving, but maybe just because people have already fed the system with their own answers. And while maybe you take time to answer the questions, especially those in the room who might not have had time already to do that, but just to remind you a bit, a kind of words which actually I cannot see on the screen, but I heard this afternoon, such as empowerment, such as knowledge hubs, things of that kind, which quite strange enough I do not see here. Labs as well. I think that's something that is maybe the same as hubs. So but maybe while we are waiting for the 1 or 2 minutes for the system to work and the answers to be provided, maybe someone can already maybe comment on this critical question of stakeholders' engagement. I mean, that's something that we see in many aspects. The European Commission wants to have engagement of stakeholders. The EFSA wants to have engagement of stakeholders. Research projects, so there is a clear demand to have stakeholders engaged. But does it deliver? And is it easy for research projects, for example, to get really involved stakeholders in the project? That would be something interesting. And see if someone has good ideas on how to do that and can share with others. Anyone in the room? No.
We see that 13 people have answered, but a few minutes ago we were around 60 around the discussions. So I guess there's room for...
Okay. Well, this kind of exercise is always difficult, because summarizing in 1 word or so it is not easy, and especially with this kind of questions which can be large. So, but we can see a few words coming. Networking, engagement, indeed. These are clear questions, but there are smaller elements such as transparency, I could see. It's maybe also something interesting. Whether transparency is something that is very, let's say, inherent in the management of research projects. No.
25% have answered.
Okay, so what at least we can maybe conclude from this first round is that we have a few words really popping up. So networking, engagement, communication, and then a lot of small, maybe one-shot communication, one-shot elements. So it's very scattered, but again, it's a matter of networks. It's a matter of communication, transparency, Involved from start. That's something that is quite interesting, and maybe I can already also comment myself with my own experience being a member of a European organization, where we have quite often solicited, but quite often at the very end of the design of a research project. And indeed, it's not easy for us first to evaluate what the added value, also what the composition of the consortium is, whether you have private companies involved, yes, no. So a number of elements which does not make the decision easy. Maybe, and now you have the same experience as we have, but maybe you have overcome this because you are part of a number of research projects.
Yes, it's exactly the same. No, it's exactly the same perspective that you have, is that some of the times it's at the end stage. So, and I mean, from a personal perspective, because there is also, I mean, FF is representing industry and Faber-TP scientists, and Faber-TP is aiming to put together private sector and public research. It is not only the problem to get involved is that the private sector, there are competitors also in the field. So I mean, the general knowledge is very good, but to get involved different companies together in the same project. I mean, we have also the scientists here; they can give you their opinion. The problem is that we are, as you say, my problem is time. I mean, from my personal perspective, is that we are asked to get into a lot of stakeholder advisory groups and so on, and it's, yeah, you don't have time. And hopefully now, no, we don't travel a lot, but you have to join these groups for 2 days from one country to another. It's impossible. I mean, that's. I don't know, perhaps networking should figure out this. We trust more one each other, and we leave the floor to the members more. I don't know. That's the problem is that we need European stakeholders, not only on national level, but at the European level. And I don't know who can fill this role more than associations, but that is a question for the Commission, I guess.
Jean-Charles.
Yeah, from the start, I was to put this also. I put other words, but I had this in mind as well. I think probably with the multi-actor approach, this is less new than it was at the beginning of Horizon 2020. And now we see projects that are from the, more or less the start of Horizon 2020. Now we should be at a stage after 6-7 years, we're at a stage where really the scientific community should have understood and must have understood and hopefully has understood that it's from the start that you need to have the stakeholders in. Second is we can certainly learn from the projects that are ended or near the end of their experience and the efficiency of this system, but clearly probably we need to see whether the stakeholders like associations are needed, or members of the association, being the European Association, that may be actors in the project in the sense of being necessary for performing research activities or whatever, or exploiting particular outputs of the projects. It's two different things. And I know that the EU structures in the agriculture domain are relatively lean, and if each time we need to go to the Secretary General of the EU Association to join a project, as soon as you have 2, 3, 4 projects on the same domain, it's the end, it's not feasible. One option would be then to take one of the board members or one of the members of the association as taking part in a project, but on behalf of the EU structure. There must be solutions like this.
Thank you, Jean-Charles. So, on the searcher side, any comment and reaction? Okay. Yeah, first, and Donald.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree with you that stakeholders and actors are not the same thing. My experience also with Philogene is that when we were contacting some actors in the project, especially large ones or very large ones, they were willing to participate, but not in the area where we asked them for, because they could do that by themselves. They didn't need Europe to do that. They would be involved in other areas, but that's not really where we wanted to see them. So our experience is that we have some larger actors, but some very large were not willing to pick up what we offered, and some smaller ones were.
This is a very difficult area. It is true that exactly what was just said there, that you know, the idea that you can have stakeholders and you can run with these projects and they can be involved. It's not as easy. It's easier said than done. Much easier said than done. And I think you need a few, not more than a few, but you need people who are trained in research and trained in practice at the same time and can move fluidly between those two areas and represent the stakeholders, genuinely represent them. And I put up the word empower, and be willing to empower them as well in the research and put their interests at the heart of the project and have it represented within the consortium so the project is self-managed actually. It's managed, it's internally incentivized to deliver the outcomes that the consortium wishes to do so, or claims to be pursuing. It's a really difficult one.
Rochelle, and then I think we will move to the next question.
Yeah.
One thing that may be useful for us is actually learning from the experience. And maybe it's our fault as well when we design topics and we put multi-actor approach at the bottom of the topic. Do we have all the elements to really say this is a topic where we need and we will have, and it will be useful to have multi-actors. And maybe we make mistakes sometimes, I'm quite sure. So learning from experience on this is certainly important for us. Useful for the future.
Thank you, Jean-Charles. We have a question on multidisciplinarity at the end, so yeah. No. Then we move.
Just one more detail on this. When it comes to the sector close to the topic, it's difficult, we have mentioned, but if you want to go out of this and involve consumers, retailers, that is impossible mission. So I wanted just to add this difference between stakeholders or NGOs even. I mean, it is
Laurence, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, just comment on this point again. Was sorry, there's still an echo on the line. Someone could mute at your end. It was just around the innovation brokerage, because I think one of the things we realised with Pathways was that we wanted to engage with the classical end users of research, so to speak, so the farming community in particular, but we also wanted to bring in the food system players, so bringing in multinationals, for example, who are engaged, for example, in the retail sector and in the feed sector, but sort of having some kind of knowledge brokers in place, I think would be really helpful to translate the terminology of a Horizon project to those companies that are perhaps very new to the world. And I think that also applies with the farming organisations, of course, but my experience was that it was somewhat easier to engage with these smaller farmer groups, but when you're talking to some of these very powerful large companies who have a lot of potential to affect change, perhaps there was a bit of something that was lost in translation around the terminology, and even once we won the grant, getting the initial steps in place around ensuring their participation. So I know in some sectors, like in medical research, they encourage brokerage between the sort of industry and the researchers, who sometimes speak very different languages. So if there could be more work in that direction, I think that would really help, particularly with these larger industry players.
Thanks, Laurence, for the input. I think that we need maybe to close now the discussion on this first item, and maybe we can continue the discussion within ATF. Frank, maybe that's a topic that we may address one day in or one of our meetings, ATM, for example. So the second question that has to do with the research gaps. What are research and innovation needs, but maybe also research and innovation gaps? We have heard a lot of comments and suggestions in the presentations of the trivial topics. We heard from Karin that there are also some expectations from the industry. So please try to translate that in 1 or 2 words or 3 maybe with this Mentimeter.
Yes, you should now have access to the second question. What are research and innovation needs?
Yeah. So maybe someone wants to already from the floor on in the chat to react. I think that's, again, quite interesting, the type of words that are coming. Trust, ethic, well, I think, is that really a research topic in itself, or is it something that should be inherent to any research program? Long-term funding.
Transversality.
Transversability. Transversability, that's, maybe someone can explain me what this word means.
Transversality,
if it's to learn from a research program to feed another research program, that's certainly something interesting. Was not much appetite to the concept of one nutrition that was mentioned by Karin. I don't want to promote it, but it's a bit of it still. So transversability. Okay, that sounds to be the central word. Now that was interesting, and interesting also to see, I think, because we have seen a number of presentations of research projects. To be honest, what sounds interesting to me that we had a number of very systemic projects, but we had one project which was really, I would say, hard nutrition, that was in relation to organic farming, which means that there's still also a case for investment in research programs which are focused on pure animal nutrition. So that's good to know. Okay, I think that we are getting close to the end. How many people have voted?
25% have
okay.
answered.
I have the number somewhere. Yeah. Good. So, from this, what kind of conclusion can we take from that? Transversability, so is a keyword. So, which is my understanding. If someone has another understanding, is transferring knowledge from one element, one project to another, or across the different thematics or disciplines. So it's a bit of transdisciplinary as well. Who wants to comment on the result? Frank, you have.
We obviously have very little commonality or whatever you could think from that. Look, you see some trends coming out. I think holistic assessment, systems approach, integrated approach, intersectoral approach. I think that's, to me, that's one of the threads that's there. Okay, it's not all one word, so it doesn't come out in the middle. This idea of taking a food system approach, I think, which is the Food System Summit and the farm to fork approach. I think that's maybe one of the gaps that I see coming out from that as well, that people have identified a need for an overall systems approach rather than, okay, there's also, I see, fundamental research there, which we do need as well, get to the essence of particular issues, but that's what I think that's a good, the systems approach I think is very important for us to take.
Yeah. Thanks. Jean-Charles.
I think one of these words came from me. Because the question, we know we need to have a system approach in research. The question is how to do it. To do it well, to do it best. Because with the system we have of projects that we select at some stage and they have 4 or 5 years duration, and we are not sure whether we'll be able to bring a new or a follow-up action with similar consortia, etc. So it's quite difficult. And also even the size of a project, which are a few million euros, is it enough to have within a project a system approach which is comprehensive, going into the details, so going broadly, large, but also in depth. And that would, I guess, require several projects that we need to combine, different instruments, different systems. So in theory, yes, but we didn't find the way for the moment to go through it. So again, good ideas are welcome.
Okay, I understand. Martin has good ideas?
Well, actually, this outcome learns me that there are a lot of elements and a lot of dimensions that you have to take into account to come up to research and innovation that's meaningful in the future, and it's different from the past. This is really different from the past, and that means that it's not simple. It's quite complex because you have to address all these kind of things. So the value of this word cloud is that there are so many words on it, very diverse. Single comments by a single person, but it's all. You need it all.
Yeah, so which does not make the life for decision maker easy, but Anna, please.
Yeah, Martin, thank you very much. Very good analysis. Trying to respond. Trying to find some solutions, reflecting, of course. I'm thinking that Jean-Charles said something essential, that is perhaps what we need is, with this, the transversability is in the middle, in the main one, but there is a lot of around that is more or less the same, and perhaps we need more projects that have to interact between them instead of not instead, but perhaps we don't have to replace, but that there's not a big consortium at the beginning, but we have different topics because we know that different topics are important, and the obligation, the multi-actor obligation is between projects instead of within a consortium which is so big that, some of the time it's very useful, but that they had limits on this size. I don't know, just reflecting. So I'm not saying that is the solution, but the chat is working now.
Okay. Oh, right. Sorry.
This is preceding. I had a question, but I can or a comment, and it comes also after what Anna just said. It's a question also of financing, yeah. And with the level of budget we have, we had always the same problem in the program committee, that we had plenty of ideas, but never the amount to fill the gaps or the demand. And to have this within, we could come, if we had more money, we could come with topics, bigger topics, or maybe topics allowing several projects. We could have complementary projects within the topic that we designed, but we don't have this amount of money. So if we want to have big things sometimes, then we will have to prioritize and make choices. And that's always the difficulty, and then it's virtually impossible by experience.
Thank you. Maybe Jean-Louis, before Jean-Louis we'll have the chat now.
There is a word on the map. It's not from me, but I fully agree. It's long-term funding. To some topics, we discussed a lot about methane this morning. If we have no very long-term funding, it will be really difficult to find a key solution to reduce methane from the genetic approach or epigenetic approach. We need, and if we have one project and 5 years after another project with not the same team, it will be very, very difficult. And I'm afraid that if we consider this topic, but it is also true for the development of legume, I think. If you read the first book of Riemann, which is Ungate, in 1966, I'm not sure we have so much new knowledge about the rumen in terms of how we can manipulate the microbiota in the rumen. And probably it's because we have not put strong force on this objective during a decade or perhaps 15 years, I don't know. So really we have and a researcher spent a lot of time to write project, to evaluate project, we have refused when one project was accepted. We go to the work, then a new project. It's very, very difficult. So perhaps we need to think in the future of a better equilibrium between research per project and research on the long term. But it's claimed, but how we can found this? It's very, very difficult, especially at European level.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Maybe there are also experience in other countries that we may learn from. I don't know if it's comparable or not. Maybe the last comment, because I think that time is flying, and I think we may cut short the last question, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we really need more money, but perhaps the cost could be more focused and perhaps more focused especially on value change, because that's where the industry is involved. And I was just thinking of a project about rapeseed that would have the topic of this morning, crops and animals together, really thinking together about the oil, the rapeseed meal, the technologies, the valorization of the different products. So that requires a choice. What is the value chain that is going to be selected? But I think rather than having very large and very broad topics, perhaps a little bit more focused and try to see the integration in the value chain.
Okay, and still someone? No.
I can certainly underscore that comment. I think I was involved in directing research in London, and there's a lot of déjà vu about everything I'm hearing today. And one of the things about the déjà vu is the mistake of taking your policy. Policies are always very complex, and agricultural policy and food policy certainly very complex. And transposing that policy into research investments without an element of articulation to identify the knowledge and innovation that you actually need. Because in the end, researchers and projects deliver knowledge, new knowledge hopefully, and innovation. They do not deliver policies.
Okay, I think that it had to be reminded. I don't know where we stand. I think we said that we might give the floor to the chat, or at least a chance to the chat to comment. I don't know whether there's a way to synthesize.
Yeah, it was more a comment from Kathleen, but I think the discussion has already more or less gone to this. She's referring that it's easy to involve the stakeholders and when you meet their interests, meaning competitivity, efficiency, etc. But it can be a real challenge when subjects involve no direct interests, like environmental topics, when they are not subjected to legislation, rules, etc. So it picks up on this comment.
In the meantime, I have shown the third questions. So people have started to answer the third question, which was how to manage multidisciplinarity. Well, you can also answer if you wish.
But I think that we are running late. Yes. So it would be good still if you could feed the question and provide your answers. And maybe that will be something that we will digest afterwards, or we will share with you. I don't know whether there's a possibility to take a screenshot and share afterwards.
Yes, of course. There will be a recording.
It would be then a good way. So please answer the questions. And then, but I think that we have already more or less started addressing this concept of multidisciplinarity, and I understand that maybe there are some messages that Jean-Charles, you have heard about trying to maybe have more focused research projects, which might be more understandable for and easier to explain to stakeholders, so that would facilitate their commitment and their engagement. So that may be a summary of it. But I think it's maybe the moment for me to hand over back to you, Frank, for the conclusion of the meeting, and thanking again everyone for your contribution, in particular in the chat. Even if we did not have much input via questions, at least the participation to the Mentimeter was very useful for us. So thank you, everyone.